Good evening. My name is Elizabeth. I began to realize my identity as a transgender woman beginning when I was 8 years old, but I didn't learn the word transgender until I was 14. At the age of 6 months, I was adopted from Taiwan by my loving mom and dad, and I am the only child. I'm a Washington, D.C. area native. I grew up in the Little Falls neighborhood of Bethesda and later the Palisades of D.C. and went to the Labrador of Washington. I was also born with Asperger's syndrome, which is commonly referred to as high-functioning autism. I wasn't diagnosed until around my sophomore or junior year of high school. Now, outside of high school, I began learning piano from my mom, who was a sergeant major in the U.S. Army Band, and then I later switched to the accordion, learning from my mom's colleague, and I competed nationally. The accordion became my primary after-school activity. Even as I was beginning to notice that I was different from my schoolmates socially, I also began to feel different inside in terms of my gender. I gravitated towards secondary after-school activities such as horseback riding, tap dancing, and theater when all the other boys were doing the typical boy stuff. I mostly had girls over for play dates, and I liked watching chick flicks movies with my mom. Now, fast forward to 2004. My mom was diagnosed with melanoma, skin cancer, that spring. Then after it went into remission over the summer and came back in October of 2004. Then after a few weeks under hospice care, my mom died at the age of 54 on December 6, 2004. However, I'm comforted by her very last words to me: "I love you." And I was very close with my mom. Now, after graduating high school, I took a postgraduate year at a mainstream boarding school in Pennsylvania. And at boarding school, I was among the founding members of the school's Gay Straight Alliance, which is still active today, but is part of a larger group. Now, I was just learning more about my Asperger's diagnosis. And for some of you may know this, some people on the spectrum, autism spectrum, can trust people blindly. Now, I had confided to someone who at the time I thought was my friend that I was a closeted transgender woman. I added her on Facebook on my then alternative profile. But unfortunately, the photos on that profile then got into the hands of a mean student who was also on my floor in the dorms, and he sent them out to the entire student body. I found out about this from the dean of students one night. I was returning from his office back to my dorm, and I heard the laughter start. But thankfully, the good part was he was identified and expelled 3 days later. Now in college, I began to live as my true self, but only in private with a couple of close friends, and that incident at boarding school still stuck with me. Also, I went to Marshall University in West Virginia, the Bible Belt. But I chose Marshall University for their college program for students with autism. If any of you are in that boat, that's something to look at. Now, I admit my grades dropped a bit because I was preoccupied with this aspect of my life. And then after I graduated in 2013 and started a job in the developmental disabilities field. I'm still in that field. For 2 years after this job, I finally decided, it's time to transition, time to move forward. And I went to a therapist for a while. And then I decided to come out to my dad on my 26th birthday, August 16, 2015. During one of the most serious conversations I think I've ever had with my dad, he said he was not too surprised that I would be having this conversation with him. I decided that a new job would be a good way to begin my transition, and I was also looking for something else. Now, out of fear of discrimination, I interviewed as my former male self. And after accepting and securing the job, I disclosed to my boss, that I'm transgender. And she and her boss said it's going to be a non-issue. So at around the time I began this job, which is 3 years ago, right to this day, I began living full-time and taking hormones. And, I'm definitely thankful for my loving family, colleagues, and church community. I go to Westmoreland Congregational United Church of Christ in Bethesda, where I've been going since 1996. And around this time last year, we added gender identity to our open and affirming statement. Now, for many of us in this room, we face challenges in transition. Now, for me, my top challenge has actually been my mom's absence. I began wondering if she would accept me as her late blossoming daughter. I began to grieve the relationship I never had with her. At midnight on the morning of May 22nd of this year, I woke up from a dream. It was present day, and as I was at her childhood home in Mankato, Minnesota. Now, she and my dad were talking about a surgery that she was about to have, and they would, pay for me to travel back to DC so I could return to work. And my family, I'm pretty stubborn with my family, so I said, I'm not going anywhere. And the next thing I felt was my mom hugging me. It was the same sensation I remembered back when she was in hospice care. And we hugged and she said, I love you, Elizabeth. This was the first dream that I can recall having a conversation with her. And I woke up crying and shaking. And I felt sad because the dream felt so short. But then I felt a wave of comfort and reassurance because I had gotten the answer and moment I was looking for. Now, next in your programs, you will see I will be performing a song. The song's name is Oblivion by Astor Piazzolla, who is a wonderful tango composer. And it's a significant song to me. It was the last song my mom and I performed together in front of an audience, and it was a song that my cousin and I performed at her funeral. It's a wonderful song, it's a beautiful song, it can evoke a lot of emotions. So I would like to invite to the stage Dominic, who will be on saxophone. I'll grab my accordion over there, and we'll be playing over there, and we hope you enjoy.
Wasn't that just beautiful? Did you feel the emotion? Did you feel the sorrow and sadness turn to joy? I mean, really, that's what we have to do in a moment like this. We have to remember that and understand that even though it's birthed out of sorrow, it's birthed out of pain, but we're going to turn it